World, what up, world, what up, world? I'm here. I'm on to present y'all a video of Ancient American Negroes. This is by Dr.Tracey Mcarthy. Good friend, good YouTuber, just good all around person, and she searches for the truth, and she try to really go beyond the details that we are given. But I felt like it was a great video. I asked her permission. Can I screen record it and present it to you guys? So I hope y'all enjoy it. Please also make sure you subscribe to Dr. Tracey, very good person. And be respectful. This lady, you know what I'm saying, do not play the disrespect, not gonna go back and forth with you. But yeah, shout out Dr. Tracey.
Everyone, welcome to History on Trial. This is Dr. Tracey Mcarthy, psychologist, attorney, and educator, and we are going to be talking about America's exposed roots. What we are doing is we are looking at an ancient source from 1836, and this ancient source looks at the ancient and modern nations of both North and South America. It explores the diversity of the people on the continent of America, on the continents, North and South America, and also looks at these diverse presentations. And so it discusses the diverse presentations of the people in terms of phenotypes and history, in terms of background. We are going to look at some interesting observations regarding the similarities between the ancient Americans, ancient Europeans, ancient Africans, and ancient Asians. And as always, if this video appears on anything other than Dr. Tracey Mcarthy, it is stolen and unauthorized. Let's get started. And to give you context, this report from this author is given to the Society of Geography in Paris. And so it's to the Society of Geography in Paris related to America. And here you can see the cover pages for the book. And you can see it is related to the American nations or outlines of a national history. And so they are looking at both ancient and modern nations of North and South America, including the islands. And here you have an introductory note providing a framework for this report. And it says, of this wide Western Hemisphere, let us retrace the history of all the nations dwelling here. Let us recall the memory. And so that's an important notation because they are looking at the history of all of the nations dwelling here, not just the standard narratives that people are used to hearing about the ancient Americans. And here the author points out that there are two groups that have been neglected historically. And the author identifies those groups as the black nations or the Negro nations and also the American nations. What's helpful with this piece is that the author attempts to describe the people prior to Columbus arriving, but the author also makes an attempt to describe what took place subsequent to Columbus arriving. And so there's an indication that different groups came over immediately after, and they were brought over by different groups of colonizers. And so the author points out several groups of colonizers, and so there's a starting point with the Spanish and the Portuguese, indicating that they brought over with them different groups of people from different countries. And so it includes the Italians, the Flemish, the Biscayans, the Canarians. There's a notation that the Canarians were brought over while they were slaves, while they were enslaved. Then number 5, you have the indication that they brought over with them the Moors of Mauritania and many African Negro nations. So that's an important notation. Then there's a discussion of the Portuguese in their colonizing role and an indication that they brought over many Negro nations, some Moors, some Gypsies, and Chinese. Now, this author also indicates that the ancient Americans were highly civilized, and they were not, as they were described, as being barbaric and entirely savage. And so there is also the discussion that many of the Indian groups were wandering groups of fishermen and hunters. And here you see the author attempting to encourage historians and anthropologists to broaden their perspective and really look deep into history and recognize the fact that the individuals that were here in the Americas prior to Columbus arriving were diverse in terms of complexion. These individuals ranged from what was noted as looking white, quote-unquote white, ranging to looking, quote-unquote, black as Negroes. And so there were also indications that groups were all of the shades in between. And so they were brown and tawny and coppery, and these people were scattered everywhere. The author also notes that there was not a single red man in America unless painted such. This is interesting because there are similarities noted, early similarities noted between individuals in Scotland, Ireland, and Britain, and individuals in the Americas, and referring to people in Europe as looking like red Indians or being red Indians, similar to the description that has been provided for the people who were later identified as American Indians. And so there was that similarity noted very early on, and so it would be interesting to find out the earlier relationships between these two groups. Was there a little bit more travel than has been previously indicated, and are these groups perhaps the same groups that were separated at an earlier point in time? Those who have been exploring the diverse phenotypes of early Americans will find this discussion helpful. The early Americans were described as coming from a variety of complexions. And there was an indication that even then in the 1800s that the tribes, the ethnic groups that were there then were like the ethnic groups that were there originally. And they are described as being quite diverse, from yellowish to olive skin tone, to coppery, tawny, reddened, brown, white, and even blackened or Negro-like. Another indication is this range in terms of stature. And so some of them were described as tall and some of them were described as dwarfish. And this is quite a range, because the tall individuals are described as being 8 feet tall, with the shorter ones being described as about 4 feet tall. And these were called giants and pygmies. And in the introduction, there's a discussion related to the culture of the ancient Americas. And so there's a notation that there was significant commerce, navigation, writing systems, and also religions, and so highly evolved religious practices. There were also universities and canals and paved ways, temples and monuments. And there's an indication that some of these architectural dynamics resembled places in Europe and Africa and Asia at the same time. And here you can see there is information related to the mounds, the altars, the tombs, the villages, the dwelling places, the pyramids that were in the Americas. And one thing that's noted is that there was such a similarity between what was seen in the Americas and what was also seen in places like England and Ireland, Mauritania, Africa. And if you check it out, you can actually see some of the things that are similar in terms of structures, buildings, and things like that between these different spaces. The author also makes some interesting notations related to the grammatical structure of American languages and how they are similar to other languages outside of America, languages such as Greek and Berber languages and other quote-unquote Negro languages. This author makes an interesting assessment related to the relationship between the ancient Haitians and the ancient Greeks, identifying them as the ancestors of the ancient Greeks and Italians. And so this is a very interesting notation, a very interesting turn of events in terms of discussing the ancient Americans. But again, throughout this entire work, there is this identification of the relationship between the ancient Americas and other groups that are throughout the world. The author continues to focus on the interesting history of Haiti and then includes Jamaica in that, and indicates that there has been an assertion that the history of Haiti and the culture of Haiti and the culture of Jamaica, that a lot of that culture is rooted in African heritage from growing out of the slave trade. However, this author indicates that much of the history of Haiti, of ancient Haitians, it comes from their own ancient culture. And so that's something that really should be looked into a little bit more. So they start looking at Haitian spirituality and noting that some of the things that are believed to have derived from Africa actually derive from the original Haitian history, the original Haitian culture, distinct from any importation of anything else. This author also talks about what the author describes as other American Negro nations, and talks about how these quote-unquote ancient black nations of America migrated to Haiti from South America. So there is this description of an origin in South America, and they are identified as Negro. We are going to wrap up this quick discussion, this annotation related to this source. We've looked at some information that this author has provided related to the diversity of the people in the Americas in terms of phenotype. And this is very important because there has been so much controversy related to who were the ancient Americans. And this discussion makes quite a bit of sense when you think about the diversity of people all over the world, and you have this diversity everywhere. And so it should be expected that you would have this diversity in the Americas. It's very interesting that this author, during that time period, would specify that there were Negro nations here in the Americas. And so that's a very important missing piece of history, and that this author is attempting to fill in. And so you are encouraged to look at this source for yourself. You have the information, the reference material at the beginning, and you can look at it for yourself, and you can use it to supplement any research that you are already doing. And this also should provide a little bit more insight for those who have been researching their ancestry and having difficulty with that, and also having difficulty with reconciling these narratives that include having ancestors that were perhaps European, African, Indian, Asian. And so hopefully this helps to reconcile some of that and help you to think about your ancestry in a broader way, and also to help lay to rest some of this assertion, the historical assertions that the people of the Americas were a monolith. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.
That was beautiful. Then a mug. That was beautiful. I usually talk about a lot of this, but for her to put it in an intellectual way so you guys can really get some good informative information out of it and do your research, that was the most beautiful part. But yeah, she references people like Chief Warhorse, Dr. Claude Anderson, and Yvette something, I forgot her name, but good informative information. I just wanted to put that on the table, and because I also have that belief, like I said, I have a strong belief that everything originated here in America and went to Africa. You know what I'm saying? I also have a belief that the Western world, America, is the Upper Egypt, and Africa is the Lower Egypt. But that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to, you know what I'm saying? It really popped out what she was saying, because she was talking about a lot of things that deal with commerce and how everything was already operating and functional before Christopher Columbus came over here, and it wasn't just all shits and hell. You know what I'm saying? But that was a beautiful video. I couldn't have put it better myself. But I talk a lot about this, man. So if you're interested in this, man, go to Dr. Tracey, just do your own research, because you'll never get the full picture unless you use your own eyes. So with that being said, how are grand rising to all?